Non-Americans, what is the most shocking thing you saw when visiting the United States? I'm Canadian, and I went on a brief road trip to the States about a month ago. The most shocking thing I experienced was how cheap the food is. We went to McDonald's and a meal for 3 people only cost about $14, and one of the meals was a salad. In Canada, one meal costs about $8. I knew the food was cheap there, but damn. Woke up early on vacation in Florida, and the sidewalk outside my hotel was absolutely covered in lizards, and it was amazing. How hard it is to get a drink. I'm Irish and over 21, and in California, even with a passport and driver's license, I was treated with skepticism. Blood started to enter my alcohol stream a few times while I was there. Ugh. Rite Aid. I can get a flu shot, HIV test, a bottle of tequila, Snickers bars, and pizza pockets all from the same store. Awesome. IHOP. I can get an entire day's worth of calories in one meal. Also, having $1 notes made me feel like I was rich. I had a huge wad of notes, but like 20 of them were $1. But still, it's a nice feeling. Speaking as a European who's visited America, this final part of the story is absolutely true. It feels special to whip out a stack of notes and slap them on the table like a mob kingpin. The first time I had to deal with TSA was enlightening. Wanted to punch the prick. Now I know that's basically normal. I'm from Singapore, and we're pretty much a conservative and reserved society. I visited the US for an elective program at UCLA, Go Bruins, and the thing that struck me most about America was everyone's friendliness or socialness. People strike up a conversation with you, ask how your day's been, and really connect with each other based on what's happening around them. The weather, how long the wait for the bus is, etc. And somehow, these fleeting connections were very real and genuine to me. I came back home a much more enlightened person with my horizons very much broadened. So thank you, Americans, for showing me simple human kindness. You have to flipping drive everywhere. Again, as a person from a country with a compact built environment, this resonates with me. My cousin from Vietnam flew into America sometime in December, and she recalled that her first reaction was, "Wow, there's so much sugar covering the ground." It was snow, but she really thought we sprinkled sugar everywhere for sweets and giggles. Why she's never heard of snow, I don't know, but it was adorably hilarious. As an Australian who just came back from America this year, what the flip, man? You guys have pretzel M&Ms. Share that stuff around. Flip! I was told I speak very good English. I'm English. My neighbor Dmitri visit New York once. He say there was surprising lack of goats, which may not be bad thing. In the South, how in your face the religion was. Signs up on cafes, it being referred to a lot in conversation, and just everywhere I got confronted by religion. The patriotism as well, such as flags being up in so many yards. I had heard this, but I guess I didn't expect it to be so much like the stereotypes I imagined in my head. I found Americans insanely friendly as well, much more so than expected, and this applied to all places I went to other than New York City. I lived in China until 1999/grade 5 in elementary school, then our family moved to Dallas, Texas. Within the next year, the following things were very surprising to me. Everything is ridiculously big, from the size of our apartment to people's houses to the size of roads to the length of time it takes to get downtown. We lived in North Dallas near Arapahoe and Hillcrest. School classrooms resembled something like a wonderland. There were bright colors everywhere. Tables are put together into clumps instead of ordered in neat rows from back to front. Then there were stuffed papier-mâché animals on the walls with people's names on it. Cute little mailboxes for everyone. TVs and computers in every classroom. A cafeteria filled with tasty foods and snacks. And a playground with swings. We were learning 400 times 5 equals 2,000 in math class. The nice people at church actually took their religion seriously. Like, actually believed it to be real. I always thought religions were stories you learn because they were important cultural stories that had some education value, like the story of Prometheus giving fire to humans, for example. I was working at my uncle's restaurant in California when I saw a man at the bar who was looking pale and seemed to be out of it. His hands were clammy and he was not fully aware. I knew these were symptoms of a heart attack and he was unresponsive, so I called the ambulance. When the ambulance arrived, he seemed embarrassed by all of it. He did not want to go to the hospital. He asked what he would be charged for the ambulance. The paramedics then tried to convince him for about an hour to go to the hospital. He declined over and over again. I offered to drive him home, but he declined that too. This experience really hit home and made me feel for my neighbors in the United States. In Canada, people don't have to make a decision about something like this. The fact that people have to make health decisions and make their own diagnosis, prognostication, and take these kinds of risks made me really feel for people who are uninsured/uncovered. As someone who has had reconstructive labrum surgery, tonsil/adenoid removal, and several other emergency room experiences, I vowed to never complain about the medical service I receive in Canada, regardless of how long I have to wait. I got beat up real bad one time and someone called an ambulance. I tried to refuse, but they talked me into going with them to make sure I didn't have a concussion or internal bleeding. I even tried to talk them out of giving me an MRI or maybe CAT scan once I got there, since I didn't have insurance. The nurses said not to worry about that. Total bills were $7,004. Whole camps of homeless people living under highway overpasses in New Orleans. In New Orleans, those people are referred to as the middle class. I was in the M&M superstore in Times Square, and I saw a woman so fat, just so fat, she used a scooter. That's unfortunately not exceptionally unusual. I'm from Australia, and I couldn't believe how high the water levels are in your toilet. My berries nearly touched the water. Also, you drive through ATMs. Crazy. Yeah, when I went there, I suddenly realized why their toilets overflow when they get clogged. This is a very strange and alien thing to most of us outside the country. Perhaps someone can explain it. A homeless man in Seattle called me a good-for-nothing N-word, word for word. Keep in mind that at the time this happened, I was a 14-year-old white kid with a steadier job than he had. Homeless people are like ghosts in America. Nobody acknowledges them, we are frightened by them, and even sometimes amused. I was at a McDonald's in the US, and no one kicked my ass for wearing my futuristic computer glasses. Because it isn't like Paris. Tax. Why not put a flipping price sticker that includes it, so I don't have to work out if I have enough money for everything? Yes, this is so true. I've had to bust out the calculator in advance for nearly every major transaction. Wouldn't say it would be shocking, but just a tad startling. Basically, flags. Flags everywhere. On the pavements, in the windows, on the side of buildings, up poles, on cars, on doors, on posters, pretty much anything it could be stuck to. Oh, and the real comfy feeling of diners. Genuinely felt welcome in any I went for a cup of tea in. Always got a raised eyebrow and a question when I asked for hot tea instead of iced tea. I'm from Canada too, and I visited Anaheim. Portion sizes were gigantic. I swear they slaughtered 5 chickens for my girlfriend's dish at the Cheesecake Factory. The next morning's breakfast at the hotel was huge too. I felt like I was going to explode after. Also, corn syrup and everything. The ketchup and Coke were thick. Was definitely weird, and I wasn't a big fan of it. Seriously, if you're wondering why you have an obesity problem, this and the last point are part of it. I know obesity is a global issue, but fixing it starts at home. I was also surprised with how friendly and forward people were. Random strangers would talk to us, and staff were nice. Everyone spoke louder than back home too. This wasn't just at Disneyland, but also at small places on Newport. Speaking of Newport, we went to Balboa Island. Just off the island is a huge plastic surgery complex. That was interesting. Oh, and Americans take their schools seriously. Many houses on Balboa had university flags flying, and I saw a lot of UCLA and USC shirts. Oh, and girls breaking into song in the middle of the street? I found this confusing. I wasn't sure whether to find it endearing or cheesy. If anyone did that back home, people would think they're insane. But in America, I saw this multiple times. Holy car! I didn't expect that many responses to this. So to clear some things up that are getting repeated in the comments, I now understand that Canada also has HFCS in many foods. However, I did still find Coke and ketchup sweeter and more syrupy. That's what I meant by thicker. In regards to Cheesecake Factory, we ate there the day we arrived. There's not much choice in local food when you're on the Disneyland resort. Plus, my girlfriend's organization she volunteers for sends the people they help to Cheesecake, so there was a bit of meaning to it. Oh, and in regard to schools, that's interesting that it's sports teams. I believe my school, the University of Alberta, has pretty good teams, but no one really cares unless they're directly affiliated with them. They seem more like clubs here, interesting to see the difference there. I'm also leaning towards good in regards to girls singing. Life could always be more like Hairspray. My first visit to America was Detroit. I haven't been back to America since. See, the problem is you went to Detroit. 90% of American citizens are too afraid to visit Detroit. Hey, lay off Detroit. Them people are living in Mad Max times. I was on the West Coast for about 2 months a couple of years ago. I'm from the Netherlands. Things that struck me. Portion sizes. Your small pizza is our large pizza. Your medium pizza is our family pizza. Your large pizza doesn't fit inside our borders. Clean streets. I saw a lot of $1,000 littering fine signs. Must have worked because there wasn't so much as a cigarette butt on the streets. Space. You have a lot of it. Everything is bigger, taller, larger, wider, and further apart. Food is cheaper than in Europe. Alcohol is more expensive. I figured out why you don't see a lot of American cars outside of America. I'll stop here before I insult people. I visited a Giants game in San Francisco and couldn't believe my eyes when Giants and Cardinals fans were sharing a couple of beers and eating hot dogs together while cheering for different teams. In Europe, we have to separate soccer fans from the moment they arrive in the game city until the second they leave, to stop them from bashing each other's heads in. Also, the entertainment value with all the songs and games is much higher than in European sports matches. TLDR, when you're from Europe and visit the USA, it's like somebody puts the contrast on your TV on maximum and turns the volume up. Rich people are richer, poor people are poorer, sweets are sweeter, laws are stricter, sports are more fun, everything is bigger, and man, do you guys build crappy cars. The amount of self-segregation that blacks and whites do in St. Louis, a city whose black-white population is basically 50-50. I almost never saw mixed-race groups of people socializing. It was either all black or all white. The two societies are almost separate. I have been here for 3 months on an internship. Things I have noticed. That whole patriotism and American ideal is dead in the youth. No one believes in the American dream anymore. Every young person I have met has said, "Yeah, this country kinda sucks, but what can you do?" And I am in the South. Also the fact that it seems no one cooks. I prepare my own lunch and make my meals because it's cheaper and healthier. People seemed strange to know that as a 20-year-old male I can cook and choose to. Also, the use of elevators. I have not seen people take the elevator down from the second floor so many times in my life. I'm sure this will all get buried, but the 1 or 2 of you who make it this far, high five! Speaking in terms of Americans I've met, I can say that I have met equal amounts of patriots and the disillusioned amongst the young and old alike. I thought fat people in Taiwan were fat, but then I saw Americans. Almost no Taiwanese are considered fat to me now. I spent a summer in Canada, but we went down to Chicago to go to Lollapalooza. On the way back, our bus had a stopover in Detroit. We left the bus terminal to get some food and passed by a taxi rank. One of the drivers asked, "You boys need a lift?" We politely declined, but he was eager as can be. "What do you want then? Wacky tobacco?" We explained that we were about to cross the border into Canada and didn't want any wacky tobacco, thanks. "White powder?" "No thanks, kind taxi man." Smack? I was shocked. Taxi drivers in Ireland are reluctant to even drive anywhere. American taxi drivers are significantly more helpful and seem to provide a much wider range of services. Other shocking things about America include the drinking age being 21. Quite how fat the people manage to get. That's not to say that all Americans are fat, just that those that are fat are really flipping fat. The existence of Four Loko. The people that hold rock and roll will kill your soul signs outside festivals. Heinz ketchup has different ingredients in America and is slightly less nice. It's really hard to narrow it down to one thing, so I'm not going to. The anti-child termination billboards, they horrified me, not in the way they intended. Along the same vein, people handing out anti-child termination propaganda outside a Nine Inch Nails concert. Only stuff I get handed at concerts here is for trashy clubs with their band-themed after-parties. The attitude of servers in restaurants. If someone messed up, the amount of apologies I would get, they were practically begging for my forgiveness, so I didn't leave them without a tip. It was awful. Religious shopping channel programs. There was a nun on TV trying to sell me a figurine of baby Jesus. I've never seen anything like it. US flags everywhere. So many. That level of continual patriotism seems almost redundant when you're smack bang in the middle of the country. Heck, I could easily keep going, but I'll leave it at that. Oh, one more. Americans call the main meal the entree. Mind-boggling. Brazilian here. Everything is so flipping cheap. From food to soda to cars and computers. Everything is a tenth of the flipping international price. And also, gas. When I was in America visiting my folks, the lady with nice hair on CNN was complaining about the gas prices, and I noticed something didn't seem right with the numbers, so I made a few conversions and started laughing. No one in the room got it. 1 liter of gas in America, $1.04. 1 liter of gas in Brazil, $3,017. I've never been to the US, but the most shocking thing I found out about America recently was that it's legal to not only carry a piece around with you for no reason at all, but to carry them openly as if you're flipping Rambo or something. I knew that many Americans own more ordnance than the military, but I just assumed they had to remain inside the house. For home protection, I hear all the time. I didn't realize you can just walk around armed to the teeth. Hey wife, going to McDonald's. Where's my ammunition? I'll come with you. Need to give my 45 a walk. Not trying to start another massive debate or anything, I'm just saying, to my perspective, that is absolutely crazy. In Australia, only the police carry weapons, and even then they are very, very rarely used. The police get in more trouble for shooting people than they would just letting them get away with crimes. Human life is considered very valuable, even criminals. And just to be clear, because the firearms are great, there are laws, replies are already starting, please note that I'm not trying to offend or judge anybody. This is simply my perspective on something that is shocking to me about the United States, as asked by the OP. I'm from New Zealand, visited California a few years ago. While getting a haircut, the lady asked me where I was from. I said, New Zealand. She then proceeded to try guess what state I was in until I told her it was a country. She then refuses to believe that New Zealand is a country, no matter what I told her about my country. That amazed me. Another thing was the guy at the airport asking if we still hunt and eat the Maori. That was asked after he asked whether or not we had indoor plumbing in New Zealand. It was then that I realized most Americans I met were extremely narrow-minded and thought the world outside the US was an undeveloped place totally reliant on their great country. Most people were quite friendly, though. Most shocking thing I saw? Poverty. Absolute poverty. I visited the States 5 times, and each and every time it is impossible not to notice a huge problem with poverty. I'm Irish, so coming to the States I had a high enough standard on how a first world country should be, and it was as sad as it was shocking to notice how badly some people had it. Chicago. Well, I've been in Chicago quite a bit, with O'Hare being the main international airport for me, and it's not the worst, but some of the houses in which I've seen people come out of, and the number of homeless, has left me speechless. I've been in Chicago in the middle of winter, and that stuff is cold. I don't understand how people manage to survive. Washington and New York, they're about on the same level. In the center of these cities you can see the wealth, but venture outside them a little, and the striking difference in living conditions is amazing. Just by looking like I had money, I've nearly been mugged twice. Los Angeles. LA was alright, except for the fact that if you get on the tram to venture from the city center out to Long Beach, you pass through some seriously trash-looking neighborhoods. It's scary, actually, that the population of Ireland lives in this small area, and they're so badly off compared to us. Also, lots of homeless, like lots. New Orleans. What the actual flip? I've never met nicer people in my life. Never. But what the actual flipping flip? How can you let people live like that? It's disgraceful. If you just walk outside the normal tourist area, you're into a place with high crime/violence, and you can see why. They have nothing. There's a massive gap between the rich and poor, and you seriously need to do something about it. The fact that America is built for cars and not for people. Excluding the original 13 colonies and some major cities, hello, New York and Boston, San Francisco and Chicago, the United States is built on a scale where the basic unit of measurement is not a human being, but a Ford F-150, at least. The streets are gargantuan, the endless sprawl of buildings is just mind-boggling, and when someone says, it's only 15 minutes, they mean it's a 15-minute drive on the freeway, and not a 15-minute walk. Everything is car-centered, and without a car you ain't going nowhere. No wonder there is so much drunk driving. There is no other option for the people to get around. The exceptions are the cities that have a working rail-based public transport system. People here can get around like they do in the rest of the world. The scale of the place, the fact that everything is so insanely spread around, makes the entire urban area of the country seem incredibly empty, anonymous, unwelcoming, and just depressing at times. Showed someone who worked in a hotel in Mississippi my passport as a form of identification. She had never seen one before despite working in the hospital industry. I believe her exact words were, "Wow, you've got like a whole book there."